Dear friends, hello. I'm very happy to introduce Will Jelbert today. I think that is the interview that really we were organizing for a long time. That's why this guest, I'm so happy to see him because I was waiting for him. You know, I was actually dreaming when I will see that great Will. Who is Mr. Will? Who is Mr. Will? Okay, who is Will? He is communication consultant. He is best-selling author. The new book is coming very soon. It's coming in October, and it's called Word Wise. And also, he is known by his book, The Happiness Animal. Happy to see you, Will.
Very happy to see you too, Olga. And thank you for that, introduction there. That's quite an introduction. Thank you.
My pleasure. Dear Will, since you are expert in communications, and I think nowadays this topic is very important because most of our audience are people, are experts who are building their brand. And why they're building their brand? Because now I believe every person, even if he works for Rolls-Royce and Louis Vuitton, he is a brand. And if he's a stronger brand, it's better for the company as well. So my question number one to you, in your book, Word Wise, you talk a lot about word trash. What is that? Can you explain to me, please?
Yeah, so that's the first part of the book of Word Wise is dedicated to word trash. Maybe you've heard of an author, Marie Kondo. She's quite popular on a Netflix show as well. So she had a book that was called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And that was about, finding the possessions you have that don't bring you joy and removing them from your life. So my book is that the equivalent of that, but with words. There are words that we have in our vocabulary that don't add anything to our communication. In fact, they do more to disconnect us from each other than anything else. So I'll give you some examples. It's abstractions when we're not specific with each other. It's small talk. When you say to me, how's everything? How do I answer that question? I don't know how everything is. I can't, it's not specific enough to create a connection. So there's several types of word trash I talk about in Word Wise. But I like to go back to this quote by Jean-Paul Sartre to me, it summarizes what word trash is, why it's a problem. So Jean-Paul Sartre said, "I'd come to realize that all our troubles spring from our failure to use plain, clear-cut language. All our troubles spring from our failure to use plain, clear-cut language." So if language isn't plain and clear-cut, you can, as a rule of thumb, you can assume it's word trash.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now I'm very interested why you decided to write that book. What motivated you? Like, why? You wake up one day, let's say you wrote The Happiness Animal, but then it's a book, How to Be Happy. And of course, I will ask the question about that in the end. But why you decided to write this, to write this Word Wise?
The Happiness Animal, I touched on the subject of honesty and radical honesty. And I also recommend to your viewers a book called Radical Honesty by an author called Brad Blanton. He really inspired me to write this book, his work on honesty. His work goes into other things such as body language and Gestalt therapy and things like that. Whereas I'm very focused just on our word choices, actual words. So there's even an A to Z of word trash in my book, and an A to Z of word power. We'll get into that later. So what inspired me, it was one man, Brad Blanton, but it was also an idea that came from my first book, The Happiness Animal. There was a chapter about honesty, and I started talking about the impact of word choices on our happiness and also how we connect with others. So in The Happiness Animal, I also talked about the most common two words that term what we're saying to each other in relationships, at home, in marriages, in friendships as well, that disconnect us. Those most common words are always, and can you guess what the other word is? If the first word's always?
If it's
Yeah,
always, it
exactly.
should be never. Yeah.
Yeah, so always and never. There's this tendency that the truth isn't big enough on its own, so we have to exaggerate to make a point. But all that does is create a lie that if I tell you, you know, assume that we're married, we're not, but um, I come home and you tell me you never remember to put the trash out, or you always forget to do that, and in response to that, I'm going to be angry because I know that there's been at least one time in the past when I did put it out. So I can defend myself, and then I'll respond with an exaggeration about you. Like, you're always moaning about me. So you say I never do something, and I say you always moan about it. And then that way, neither one of us is able to connect with the truth or each other. And it just blows up, but it has the effect of spiraling. Exaggeration leads to more exaggeration, and the two people in the conversation lose the connection with each other and with the truth.
It's very unusual. It's unbelievable. It's like very strange, because the word always and never, actually, we always use in our speech, and we get used to this. Always people saying lie, or never you will tell the truth. And now I understand what you're saying. You're just blaming the other person, and you don't give him the way out. You already put this cliche on him.
Yeah, you could say it's a cliche, and it, yeah, it does the opposite of building a relationship.
So we don't need
So
that.
they're just two examples as well. They're the two most common examples. But you know, what I've done in WordWise is built a list out of about 400 examples of specific words that also either disconnect us, and some of those words are the word power words that help to do the opposite.
Okay, let's talk about the words. Let's talk about this word power. Let's talk about what connects us. Which words to use? So, okay, always and never. I understand, and I will try also not to use them in the talks, because it's a very important topic: how to build relationship and not to break relationship and connection. What are word power?
So if using the word power, I'll go back to another quote. It's I can't remember who said that, but I'll tell you afterwards. It's the quote goes something like, "In the broadest sense possible, writing and speaking well means there's an electricity about it." I think that's from a book called Quack This Way, which is a funny title. I like that title, Quack This Way. So that quote is, "In the broadest sense possible, writing and speaking well means there's electricity about it." Connection, electricity. So if you think about when you're, say you have an appliance, you buy a coffee machine, but it has the wrong plug. Maybe it has a UK plug and you're in somewhere in Europe. So you need to put a different plug on it. Mm-hmm. So when you cut the cord, you have different colored wires. There's a red wire, maybe a blue wire. Like in England, there's a green and a yellow wire as well. If you plug the green and the yellow wire to the red wire on the plug, that's not going to cause a connection. That's not going to create connection, because you haven't been specific with which wire you're putting to which wire. You might get a big shock, actually, or otherwise the coffee machine isn't going to work. You're not going to have that espresso today. Sorry about that. So the same applies to our words. If we're not specific with words, then we don't have that electricity. We don't have that. So at a very sort of broad level, you could say that word power is specifics. But there are a couple of examples that do more than just connect. They can actually change the course of a conversation. So if you want, I can give you an example.
Yes, no, of course, I want the example. I'm very interested. You're very good, Will. You're very good in intrigues as a director and producer of movies, documentary films. I will say that you're doing intrigue very well. All of us, we're waiting. So tell us this word power. What are they? How to talk? Of course, tell us.
All right. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to make sure that you wanted the example before. I don't like to give one without unsolicited. So the word that does this that's been documented the most is the word willing. Okay, so there's some psychologists in the UK studied thousands of hours of conversations, and they found cases where there was perhaps a doctor or a psychologist trying to persuade a patient to do something. It could be to go to a meditation session, or it could be to go to a weight loss class for a doctor. And if the doctor asked the patient, can you go to this weight loss class next week? They're likely to say no. A lot of people said no. But if they changed the question and said, would you be willing to come to this next week?
Mm-hmm.
People who had said no the first time they were asked changed their answer and said that they would be willing to do it. So willing can change people's minds.
So you mean that this word willing is a very positive word? It empowers you, it gives you
Yeah,
strength, or why?
it's word power because it has the power to change the course of not of a conversation, but also behavior. It can lead to a different outcome in physical action terms as well as in the conversation. Not just someone saying yes, but someone actually doing something after saying yes.
Mm.
That's why it's powerful. Not that you want to persuade people to do things that aren't helpful. I'm not trying to promote that. So another example of a word power is two verbs that we use a lot: speak and talk. Now, one of those words disconnects us, and one of them helps us to connect. Which, between the verb to speak and the verb to talk, which one do you think is the word trash and which is the word power?
I think the verb speak connects us, and most probably talk disconnects us.
Exactly. So you don't even need to read my book. You already understand the
No,
word
no,
power.
I will be the first to read your book. I'm very interested. I'm very interested. But tell me,
Yeah.
please,
So
why? Yeah, why?
the same thing with that happened with willing. Think about a crisis situation. The other day, I was on the Williamsburg Bridge in New York. Okay, I saw someone. At first, I was worried that they were on the cycling lane, standing on the edge of the bridge, on their own. So I actually turned my bicycle around and I went back and asked them,
Yeah.
what's up? It turned out that they just have friends that were climbing up to take a picture from a better vantage point. Not something that I endorse, by the way. But imagine a situation where someone is about to jump off a bridge. If you say, if the police officer or whoever gets there first says to them, can we talk? Do you want to talk about this? Oftentimes the person's going to say, what's the point of talking? I don't want to talk. But if the crisis negotiator says, can we speak? They're much more likely to start speaking. That's because the verb to talk is associated with lots of other, perhaps what you might call negative associations, like you walk the walk, but you talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk, or talk is cheap, things like that. There's too much talk. People assume there's too much talk, but nobody that I can think of says there's too much speaking. You don't hear that. You hear there's too much talking, but there's not too much speaking, right?
Yes,
So
speaking is
that
kind of like
association.
personal speaking. I speak to you, you speak to me. We hear each other, we are connected, but talk, parents saying, don't talk nonsense. Talk is also, there is something negative in that. It's like rumors or gossiping or something like that, yeah?
Yeah, it could be gossiping. You're right. Yeah. So they're
Uh,
just two examples. If you can apply those two examples, instantly I would like you to come back to me in a week's time. Try asking people to do things with would you be willing? What you want to avoid, which is a word trash way of asking the question, is can you do me a favor? That's something I recommend not using because it's very abstract. If you ask me, can you do me a favor? I don't know what you're about to ask me, but usually I will imagine you're about to ask me to do something big. A favor is something like, can you pick up my kids from school? Can you come to this event with me next week? Can you look after my dog or take it to the vets? Something quite that's going to take up a lot of time.
Don't
Where
worry, I
you
love
might just,
kids, I like dogs, and I like to go to events. So for me, till now, everything I heard is very nice. I didn't hear anything bad, so it's actually
it's good for
exciting.
you, but imagine if I'm very busy and I don't have a lot of time. So,
Yeah.
and if you say, can you do me a favor? My initial reaction in that conversation is to be, oh, what are you going to ask me? Oh my God, it's going to be big, isn't it? Yeah. But we might be having dinner and you say, can you pass the salt? Can you do me a favor and pass the salt? Which is very easy. So just ask me to pass the salt, or just ask me to go over to the kitchen and grab the pepper.
So you will better say, would you be willing to pass me the salt, or how?
That might be unnecessary. You know, salt is a very quick request that you,
So what
less
you will
words,
say? Give me the
less words
salt,
is
please.
sometimes better. But
Okay.
if it was something more like, would you be with the event? Let's take the example of the event next week, which you like going to events.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask me, would you be willing to come to this event with me next week? I'm much more like to say yes than if you ask me, can you do me a favor and come to this event with me? By saying it's a favor to you, it instantly makes me feel like it's something that I don't want to do. It's something that I'm doing just for you. Whereas if you say, can you be willing, would you be willing to do it? Then it's my own will that's choosing to do it, which means that I want to do it as well. So it goes from favor is me not wanting to do it to willing is me wanting to do it.
But Will, tell me please, how did you come to that? Did you talk with psychologists? Did you notice it yourself by talking with people? Like, how did you notice it?
Yeah, so I did quite a bit of research for this book, Wordwise, and those thousands of hours of conversations that I mentioned, there's people like Elizabeth Stokoe in the UK who did the research on willing specifically. And so it's not my own research, but what I tried to do was pull together all the research that's out there from linguists, from psychologists, people who have had all that time working at universities to study hours, thousands of hours of conversations. Not me, but I borrowed their research and summarized it into this book. You know, some people were doing research about specific words, but there's not a whole list of all these word power words in one book, or not a whole list of all these word trash words in one book. So that's why I created this new book.
Will, tell me please, you also recommend to remove the word just. Why we need to remove the word just from our speech?
Okay, so just has the tendency to depower what we're asking for or saying. And in the US now, there was a former Google executive called Ellen Lenz, and she decided to ban the word just from her team's communications. They weren't allowed to use just in their emails. They would use Control and F to find it and then delete it before they sent the email. So she noticed that she was using the word just a lot, and it wasn't about being polite. It wasn't, it was a message of subordination. So she said, sometimes it was self-effacing, sometimes it was duplicitous. And as she started really listening to what she was saying, the sentences with the word just in, she realized that when she deleted it from her sentences, it clarified and strengthened the message. So think about these example sentences. I just wanted to check in on. I just wondering if you decided. It makes you feel like tentative. Just wondering if you decided between this and this. If you can just give me an answer, or I'm just following up on. That
It
makes you come.
sounds like you not really care about what's going on, but you, as you say, you just pretending that you're doing that. You just, you know, this just, that means that you're not serious. You're not really checking on me, but you, it's a kind of not serious. This is not a good word because there is no meaning, but it makes the meaning less important. That is what I feel.
Yeah, so you're right. It has no meaning. So in that sense, it's a filler word, but it's worse than just being a filler word. You might have heard me say a couple of sentences ago, I used a filler word. because I can't eliminate all word trash from my own speech. I try, I practice it all the time. I said like a couple of times, which isn't healthy. It's so prevalent everywhere. And, you know, my mirror neurons also pick it up from living in New York. You go to a coffee shop, you hear that word all the time. But just is more sinister than a filler word because it erodes your confidence rather than just saying, and I just said it then, rather than just saying. In that sense, it means only saying. It erodes your confidence. So if you go to somebody and say, if you can just give me an answer, that's not as powerful as saying, can you give me an answer? It makes you seem timid. That's what I'm trying to say. And what this former Google executive, Ellen Lenz, discovered is that women use just a lot more than men do. So in business, the word just is holding women back, especially.
You know what I feel, Will? I think that your book can change the world. With your word, it can change the world. Really, it's a very deep research. You worked on that very hard and you dedicated a lot of time on that. And I feel that if we can know that words and we can use them, it will be very empowering. It can help a lot of people. So it's a very interesting book. And I recommend to our audience to read it. And really, I'm looking forward, because I even tried to order that, but they say you cannot order it by Amazon to Kazakhstan. And now I understand, because you told me that it's not yet on sale. But I'm very interested because you said there are around 400 words, and it's a very big research, and it's very interesting because now I understand. Yeah, the word just is not that nice, but will you be willing to talk again on that topic? It gives you importance, it gives you power, and it gives you interest. I understand it only now. It's very interesting.
Thanks, Olga. I think you and I, let's speak to Amazon and ask them, would they be willing to ship to Kazakhstan? Because obviously, and let's say that also other bookstores are available. Amazon's not the only option. But I'll get you a book. Don't worry.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy about that. And it is, for me, it is a very interesting talk. Since I was small, I'm interested in the words. And because I'm speaking Japanese, little bit Arabic, English, studying French, all my life I'm moving from country to country. And I notice how the language can give you the power. And especially English is spoken by everyone. You did such a deep research, which is very important nowadays, because I think with the power of word, we can stop wars, we can make peace, we can find friends, we can make beautiful families, we can talk with our children. So it's a very important tool.
Very important. And especially think about 2020 with the coronavirus, COVID-19. I personally haven't been able to see my family much this year or people that I care about. So words have been the primary way of connecting with people I care about and people I don't care about so much as well. So what I'm trying to say is words are more important now than they ever have been before.
Are you together with your family now? Is it okay now you're together, or still you cannot see each other?
We can. I just don't quite fancy the flight to the UK yet. I'm in New York, they're in England. So let's see. In a few weeks, and for Christmas, I hope to be at home in the UK.
Of course. I wish you that. I want you to be together and to enjoy time together. And thank you so much for your beautiful talk, for your very deep research. I feel that you're dedicating your life, your time, all your efforts to that book and to that research. And let's this book help the world, help the people of the world, and help us. It was a big, big pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Olga. I appreciate you for inviting me to talk to you today.
Thank you.
To speak with you today.
To speak with you today.
Okay.
So much. Thank you.
Yes. We didn't talk, we spoke.
We spoke greatly.
Thanks, Olga.